Hey everybody, Riot Mort here with the patch 13.23 rundown. And it is time for the launch of our 10th set, Remix Rumble. It's a little late right now, I'm a little tired, but I'll power through this. This is a rundown of everything you can expect. Now, if you played PBE a bunch, this rundown's probably not for you. There's not going to be a ton of new information here. But if you haven't played PBE, this rundown's for you. This will go over what you can expect, some of the changes, some of the finalized numbers, things like that. So let's dive in and see what you can expect with our 10th set. First off, we have the champions. So I've organized these in terms of tank and then non-tank. So at 1 cost, you can expect Taric, Tahm Kench, Kennen, Lilia, Cassante, and a little Olaf and Vi to be kind of tanky. Those are your main tanks here. Otherwise, you've got Yasuo, Evelynn, Annie, Jinx, Corki, and Nami as damage. From here, you can see not a lot of backline damage. You got Corki, who can do some AD, Nami and Annie, who can be AP. Jinx can be pretty much attack speed. Yasuo is interesting in that he gains an AD every time he gets a kill, so he's kind of that fun stacking champion. But yeah, those are kind of your 1 costs. Pretty good staples here. Some strong ones right now. Kennen's been pretty strong. Evelynn's been pretty strong. But yeah, and Annie was just recently buffed on the last day of PBE. So you can probably expect a lot of people to be playing Annie. But yeah, cool. We'll go over the traits and stuff, everything, but just right now, going through the champions. On the 2 cost side, Pantheon, Garen, and Gragas are kind of your tanks. Gnar, kind of a mid, more damage than tank though. And then Jax, Aphelios, Katarina, Kai'Sa, Kayle, Twitch, Bard, Senna, and Seraphine. Pantheon, really good tank for the punk comp especially. Garen, pretty good if you're looking to play some 8-bit. Gragas is really flexible with Disco and Bruiser. So some good 2-cost tanks there. Expect to see a lot of Gragas. On the damage side, some interesting notes here. Katarina is a range champion this time. She has 2 range, not 1. So you can put her in the 2nd row. She does some pretty powerful damage. Kai'Sa is an AD champion. She likes Infinity Edge. She has a 30 mana spell, so she shoots lots of spells. Pretty cool. Bard, AP champion, can heal and do some damage. Senna, AP champion. Kayle, attack speed, things like that. But yeah, so some pretty good 2 costs here. If you can get an early 2-star 2 cost, can get you through the mid game. Yeah. On the 3 cost side, Nico, Amumu, Set, Mordekaiser are your tanks. Echo as well, a little out of order here. Riven, much more damage than tank. And then Samira, Lux, Lulu, Urgot, Yone, Misfortune, and Vex as your damage dealers. You can expect to see here Echo, very flexible. You'll notice there's a lot of 3-trait tanks, so they end up being played in a lot of really interesting comps. Misfortune, pretty good ranged AD champion to get you through the early and mid game. Urgot as well, 2 range damage dealer. Yone can do a lot of damage and he gains Omnivamp as the fight goes on. So yeah, some pretty cool stuff there. Riven's kind of been dominating the PBE. Really loves things like Titans and IE and Quicksilver and stuff like that. So definitely some cool champions here. Lulu also another fun favorite. And then I will say personally, Samira is one of my favorite ranged AD champions we've ever made. Just make sure you put lots of crit on her. She's bound to critical strike items. So lots of gloves means play Samira. All right, on the 4 cost side, we have Thresh, Zac, Poppy, and Blitzcrank. Those are going to be your 4 cost tanks. Expect to see a lot of Blitzcrank, some Zac, some Thresh, and even some Poppy. Poppy's a little harder to pivot into. Ezreal, ranged AD champion. Zed, pretty hard to play, but has some good builds with some AD. Caitlyn, another ranged AD champion. Don't build Ginsus on Caitlyn. She loves crit and Shojin. Karthus, definitely one of the scarier backline AP champions. Can blow up your backline if you're not ready for it. Twisted Fate, kind of like a ranged Kai'Sa. Pretty cool, throws lots of cards. Ari loves blue buff, definitely the best blue buff user in the set. Viego, a ranged melee champion. And then interestingly enough, here we have Akali. There are not 2 different Akalis in the sense that there's like 18 champions in the pool, but they're actually just 1. And it will adapt based on if you have more true damage or more KDA in. So, and they do have very different spells. KDA Akali dives the back line, does more damage there. Whereas True Damage Akali is much more front to back, but has higher DPS. So pick on based on what your need and what your comp's looking for. KDA Akali, really popular, definitely the scariest backline access in the set. So watch out for her. If somebody's playing her, don't put your carry in the corner. And then 5 costs. Alawi, kind of the big tank here, provides those extra tentacles that gives you some extra frontline as well. Ziggs providing some AP. Lucian, an AD range carry. Kane, an AP damage frontline that provides some extra gold and health if he gets kills. Sona, really good Ginsu's user, has 3 forms you can choose from: healing, attack speed, and damage. Kiana, true damage, frontline AD, so loves Infinity Edge, Bloodthirster, stuff like that. And her bling bonus, which we'll talk about later, if she gets a kill, can actually generate you items like old Tom Kench could. Jin is a ranged AD champion. You want to get a Shojin on him, as well as 2 AD items, and then he summons turrets on his bench, which does a bunch of damage. And then Yorick, probably my favorite champion of the set. Give this guy like a Titans BTIE, and his zombies will do so much damage. They'll mosh it up. He summons big zombies as well that are very powerful. So, pretty cool. And those are the champions you can expect to see. On the trait side, we have KDA, as you saw. KDA will give you a bunch of hexes in a really interesting sparkly formation, and anyone who stands in there gains some ability power, some AD, and some health. And KDA champions will actually switch to their all-out skins, and they'll gain double those stats. So pretty easy to play vertical. If you're looking to play your very first game, it's a pretty easy comp to play. Pentakill. Pentakill champions take less damage if you're running 3 Pentakill. And then for each champion kill, your strongest Pentakill champion will rock out. So they're very snowbally. If they get 1 kill, they get stronger. They get another kill, they get stronger. And then on the 5th kill, your Pentakill champions all rock out, and your team gains 50% attack speed. So you can see here they get some flat blows damage. That means Karthus likes things like Death Cap. You want AP on this because they're already getting those damage multipliers. So yeah, Pentakill's a pretty fun one. True damage. True damage champions deal bonus true damage. Pretty cool. Really good at getting through frontline. It makes Senna really powerful, Akali as well. In addition, if they're holding an item, they gain a bling bonus. So kind of like the old cyber augments from the days, you want to make sure to spread out your items so everyone has their bling bonus active. They're pretty powerful. Yasuo gets an execute. Kennen will stun an extra target. Echo will heal while his shield is up. Akali gets Omnivamp, things like that. So definitely want to spread out your items and get those if you're playing true damage. Disco. Disco's interesting. Kind of reminds me of old Jade. You'll get a disco ball. It takes up a hex, but it will disappear when combat starts. Anyone starting near the hex will gain attack speed and heal every 3 seconds. So really good for long stalled out fights. You get a Blitzcrank with like 5 disco and some good tank items, and he will heal quite a bit. Give that attack speed to someone like Twisted Fate. And again, it doesn't work just on the disco champions, so you can pair it with like a Ziggs, for example. Give that Ziggs a bunch of attack speed. Can be really cool. Heartsteel. This is the economy trait. Pretty interesting, but basically every time you get kills or lose a combat, you'll gain some hearts. And then every 4-player combats, those hearts will convert into powerful rewards. So the more Heartsteel you play and the more you lose, the better the rewards. But you can only do it every 4 turns. It'll happen automatically. And it scales with stage time. So your cash outs in stage 2 are going to be very small. Whereas if you can play something like 7 Heartsteel in stage 6 and then lose a few and cash out, woo, you get some big rewards. So definitely going to be my favorite trait to play. You don't need to get it on 2-1. You can actually pivot into it later, which is kind of cool. So yeah. Punk. Punk is going to be a very popular reroll comp, mostly centered around Jinx as a backline and Pantheon as a frontline. But basically every turn you're going to get a reroll that costs 1 gold instead of 2. Make sure you use that because that's going to give you 3% bonus stats. And then every additional reroll where you spend gold, so it won't count things like golden ticket or anything like that, but where you spend gold, you will get 1% extra. And so this is going to stack, giving you more and more health and AD. This trait can get pretty wild. So for example, the 4-piece here, you notice it says 280 health, 28 attack damage. By the end of the game, that can get upwards of, if you've got 200%, that can be, almost 600 HP, 60 AD for a 4-piece, which is really good. 8-bit. 8-bit is very similar. 8-bit's a weird trait in that if you put it in the early game, it actually does nothing. Like, when you first put it in, nothing. You get no bonus. But as you do damage over the game, your score will increase. It keeps track of all damage dealt by your entire team. And each breakpoint you hit will give you more and more and more AD. So, all the way up to 10 breakpoints. And so at its max, for a 2-piece, you can get 35% AD. Pretty good. So, definitely give that a try. Really good for Caitlyn. And the nice thing is the damage goes up pretty quick. So, like, late game, if you pivot into a Caitlyn, it'll stack pretty quick, and you'll get like 4 or 5 stacks after your first combat. So, don't be worried if you don't start with 8-bit. Country. Country is a very powerful trait, going to be very popular. It's the summon trait this game. You play 3, Tom Kench, Katarina, Samira, something like that, and you will get Hecarim, the Dreadsteed. As the fight starts, he'll come in, do some extra damage. Now, the interesting thing about Hecarim this time is that, yeah, he's like an extra unit and he can be strong, but he provides extra utility to your team. So, for example, if you have 3 country, when Hecarim comes in, your team gains 20% attack speed. At 5-piece, he gives all your country units 20% Omnivamp. So, one of the interesting things about Hecarim is he makes the country units better, not just him. And 7, very powerful if you can pull it off. So, yeah. Real quick, shout out to Meta TFT. They made these really cool tables. I'll leave them on the screen for a little bit here. But these are the Heartsteel tables. So you can see here, for example, if you get 100 hearts, it's about a 17 gold value, which can be like 2 item components and a gold. It can be a support item, things like that. So again, I'll leave it on screen for a second, but you can see it stacks up pretty quick. And if you can get some of those big rewards all the way up to like 400 hearts here, you can see you start getting like a champ duplicator and 44 gold. So a lot of cool possibilities here. And then here's the other one where you start to see the really wacky stuff. I like the one at 750 here where you get a target dummy with 3 lockets on it and 20 gold. That one's pretty funny. Or you instantly get 3-star Cassante, Aphelios, Yone, and Set. So fun stuff in here. There's some really cool ones. And then the other thing is if you get 6 8-bit and you manage to break the high score, which is, I believe, 456,789 damage, you will get the high score reward, and it will be one of these. So pretty cool. Just a fun little thing. It is very hard. You're not going to get it every game. You're not going to be able to force it. But if you do, something cool for you there. So again, nice to have some formatted tables here. They look pretty cool. All right, back to traits. Emo. Emo plays around Amumu, Vex, Annie, and Poppy. Emo champions' abilities cost less mana, so you want to get in like 2 Emo so they cost less mana. Anytime an ally dies, they'll gain a boost of mana, so that's always nice. And then if you have 6, you also gain 20 AP, so cool. All right, EDM is definitely the most complicated trait here, okay? So the way EDM works is, let's say you're playing 4 EDM with Jax, Lux, Zed, and Zac, okay? You'll have a selector and you can sample one of their spells. Let's say we sample Lux, okay? What that does is it gives all the other champions Lux's spell, Lux's exact spell, okay? So if this is a Lux 2, the other champions, no matter their star level, have Lux 2's spell sample. Let's say it's 400 damage. I don't remember the number. Then, at certain intervals, everyone will cast Lux's spell at the same time. They will use their items and traits. Meaning, let's say you had 2 death caps on Jax for some reason. That Jax, that Lux laser he shoots, will be amplified by those death caps. The itemless Zac will just shoot the base version. It also means, let's say you sample Zac, but you're running Dazzler. When your Lux casts the Zac spell, it will apply Dazzler. So pretty interesting, but the way to think about it is that champ with their items and traits casts the sampled spell, okay? Which means if you want to play something like Zed, you're going to want items that like power up your AD, like Titans, Giant Slayer, Hand of Justice, stuff like that, on more people on your team. So pretty interesting. There's a couple builds. It's definitely the hardest to play trait though. Do not try to play EDM your first game. It's a hard trait. Moving on, Jazz. Jazz is, I think, going to be the favorite trait of a lot of our challenger players. If you remember the old augment Stand United that gave you power based on the number of active traits in your trait window, that's what Jazz does. The more active traits you have, your team gains bonus health and bonus damage. So for example, if you're running 2 Jazz and you have 7 traits active, you'll gain 14% bonus health and 7% bonus damage for your team. Late game Jazz comps, very fun to put together. You get a lot of extra power from that trait. Very fun. So expect to see a lot of Bard, Misfortune, and Lucian in late game comps. Hyper Pop is a really interesting one. Hyper Pop is a one piece in the sense that if you throw a Lulu in her comp, every time she casts, she grants the 2 closest allies 3 mana and 10% attack speed for 4 seconds. But if you can get Ziggs and an extra, an emblem and stuff like that, you can get all the way up to 4 Hyper Pop. And when that happens, they're going to be sharing a lot of mana and attack speed. So can be pretty fun, can get things going and get them accelerated. All right, moving on to classes. Big Shot. This is our ranged AD trait. Basically, after they cast their ability and for 3 seconds, they gain bonus AD. Now, this does apply to the spell. So let's say, the combat starts, they're sitting at that 10%. Corki casts his spell. That spell is benefiting from the 40% AD here, and then the next few autos until it fades away. So the spell is always benefiting from the increased AD, which means if you've got 6 big shot, your spell is hitting twice as hard, which is pretty cool. Bruiser, pretty standard trait. Bruisers gain more health. They scale up 20, 40, 80%. The thing to note about Bruiser is it's a very good splash. 2 Bruiser gives your team 100 health. That's a good thing, 100 health. So expect to see a lot of 2 Bruiser splashes. Crowd Diver. This is an interesting trait. It's not a backline assassin trait. These are mostly melee champions. But the way it works is they start off with some bonus damage. So let's say you're running 4 Crowd Diver. Your Crowd Divers do 30% more damage. This is increased every second they're alive. So 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. So the longer they stay alive, the more damage they deal. Pretty cool, pretty basic. But when they die, what happens is they will jump to the furthest enemy and do a 1 hex AoE radius stun and hit that enemy for 300 damage. So it's a good backline disruption when they die. Your itemless Crowd Divers can be extra valuable here, providing some backline CC. Pretty cool. Dazzler. Dazzler's another one. Expect to see a lot of splashes, especially Ziggs. If you can get Ziggs with 2 Dazzler, he kind of hits the whole board. Because Dazzler's ability reduce anyone hit, their damage they deal by 15%. So the enemy's going to deal less damage if you can dazzle them, which is cool. In addition, their spells will burn for extra damage. So for example, if you're running 4 Dazzler, your Ziggs Bombs does 1,000 damage. An extra 600 damage on top of that will tick over a few seconds. So, yeah. All right, Sentinel. Sentinel, your team gains armor and magic resist. Sentinels gain double. Pretty standard. Really good splash because it gives your team armor and MR. So, yeah, kind of like Bruiser. You're going to like that splash. Edgelord. This is pretty cool, and definitely one of those comps you have to be really careful with because the numbers can be deceiving here. Let's say you're running 5 Edgelord. All your Edgelords are going to gain 45% attack speed. The melee ones, which is everyone but Kale, basically, if their target drops below half health, they will dash through them and double this attack speed. So now you have 90% attack speed, which is pretty good. That means 7 can get you all the way up to 140% attack speed, which is wild. So they can go pretty fast. If you like those melee attack speed champions, this is pretty cool. Great with Riven and Yone and Viego. So, yeah. All right, Executioner, pretty basic. If you run 2 of them, your spells can crit now, so you don't have to build like JG or IE. And you'll gain increased critical strike damage. and their chances increase based on the target's missing health. So the lower health they are, the more likely you are to crit. But yeah, pretty cool. Mosher is a bunch of melee champions that gain attack speed and Omnivamp, which increases up to 100% based on their missing health. So if they get lower, they gain more attack speed and Omnivamp. They all kind of have that like Olaf feel, which is funny because Olaf's not a Mosher. But yeah, attack speed and Omnivamp. Yes, there are there's 7 of them plus the emblem. There could be an 8. We didn't really want to bait people into playing this awkward 8 melee comp. Maybe that'll change someday, but we hear you. All right, last class is Spellweaver. Pretty basic. It's our AP caster class. The thing to note here is if you run at least 3 of them, your team gains 15 AP. So if you can afford to run 3 of them, it's very good for your team. 5 and 7 will scale that up. They gain more damage every time a Spellweaver casts. Pretty cool. If you can somehow hit 10, send me a screenshot. 10 is very hard to hit. I have not seen anyone hit this yet, so send me a screenshot if you hit this. Guardian. Guardian is back. Once per combat at half health, Guardians shield themselves and their closest ally for a % of their max health. If you can get 4 or 6 Guardians, this is a lot of shields to burn through, so definitely a good tanky trait. Rapid Fire, your team gains 10% attack speed. Rapid Fire champs gain more on every attack. So again, 2 Rapid Fire gives your team 10% attack speed, and Rapid Fire stacks up to 10 times, so you can get a lot of attack speed. And then finally, Super Fan. This is an interesting one. It's a very early trait because it's a 1-1-2-3 champion, but they power up your Headliner, which we'll talk about in a minute. If you run 3, your Headliner gets a unique item. If you run 4, they gain some health and Omnivamp. And if you run 5, that item becomes Radiant. So, pretty cool trait. Definitely check that out. Okay, next up, let's talk about the set mechanic. So, if you're new, the set mechanic is called Headliners. And the way this is going to work is in the shop. You will see on the right side, there is a 2-star unit. So you can see here, Twisted Fate is 2-star. He costs 12 gold. And one of his traits is active, Disco. And that's going to be a trait that you're going to get 2 of instead of 1. So you can have 1 Headliner at any time. If you don't have a Headliner, there will be 1 in every shop. Every shop reroll, new Headliner. If you do have 1, it'll be in every 4 shops. So you can see a new one that you like, you might be able to swap, but you have to sell your old one before you can buy the new one. In addition, every Headliner has a unique ability. This will allow us to balance them better, create some unique ones here. So for example, Twisted Fate, you can see here his Headliner effect is throws 3 extra cards on his spell. So again, some are basic stats, some aren't. We'll go over those in a second. But definitely want to make sure you have a Headliner in your comp, power it up, and the right Headliner can make a difference. But if you played set 4 with Chosen, it's like that with a lot more control because you see so many of them this time. So yeah. Headliner shop odds are a little different. So for example, you can see here if you're level 4, you have an 80% chance to see a 1 cost and a 20% chance to see a 2 cost. At level 6, that's when the 3 costs start appearing. At level 8, that's when the 4 costs start appearing. And at level 9, that is when the 5 costs start appearing. So definitely can try to pick the right Headliner. That's why level 6 and level 8 are great transition points to try to change your Headliner. But yeah, pretty cool. All right, so here's some of those bonuses I talked about. This should all be up to date with the latest balance changes. But again, you can see some are pretty basic, like Corky, 20% attack damage. Some are more interesting, like Kennen. Every time they zap, they heal 4% of their max health. And you can see going through here, Nami's basic with health. Jinx, the minigun grants an extra 1% attack speed. Rocket launcher deals additional 10% damage. Bard is an interesting one. Every time Bard casts a spell, you'll start to generate, every 8 times you'll generate a Doot, and at the combat start you'll throw those Doots and do some big damage, so Bard becomes this interesting stacking champion. Gnar instantly casts to Mega Gnar if he's a Headliner. Gragas has some DR. Yeah, Katarina, her final spell bounce does some really chunky damage. Seraphine, every 2 casts she'll throw an extra one that does 40% more damage. So yeah, Senna does a slightly bigger pulse as her final pulse. So some pretty cool bonuses here. On the 3 and 4 cost side, this kind of continues here. You know, Samira gains some AD and crit. Lux gets built-in spell crit, which is pretty cool. Amumu's a good one, where Amumu's passive, instead of just giving armor, will give armor and MR. Mordekaiser becomes this cool AP carry, where if Mordekaiser gets kills, he'll gain stacking AP. So, and then the 4 costs, you know, Ari gains some ability power. Zed, the clones do some extra damage. Blitzcrank, the passive, will also do max health damage. Thresh gets to cast more often. Caitlyn fires an extra bolt. We saw Twisted Fate with the 3 additional cards. So yeah, these are on the screen, so you can pause at any point and see, check them out. And then the 5 costs. 5 costs generally have pretty low stats, but a unique effect. So Sona gets 5% attack speed, but every auto makes that go up. Kiana, whenever Kiana copies an item, grant her 5% bonus AD permanently. Yorick summons 2 extra zombies, and the big zombie is bigger. Ziggs gets to cast even more. I think Ziggs is one of the more powerful ones for sure. Lucian, the spell fires more. Jin gets to start with a rifle already on the bench, which means he gets to conducting his concert much quicker. Kayn will get extra gold and extra health, and Alawi will slam even more often. So there you go. There's your headliner effects. In addition, portals are sticking around. Portals are back, but they are a lot more subdued than they were in Runeterra Reforged. You're not going to see as big of a crazy shift, but you can see here like first augment prismatic, or training dummy, or increased player health. So definitely pick the portal that you think is right for you. Same voting thing as last time, but again, they're definitely not as crazy. Here is the full list of them. Most of the augment ones, people, you know, some are interesting. I think all silver augments is a weird one, but you can try that one out. All prismatic can show up. Gold augment third if you're looking for a pretty standard game with no surprises at the end. Then we have some champions. Start with a 3-cost champion. Start with 3 random 1-cost champions. Gold per augment, gold per item. Pot of gold is a new one. At 6-1, all living players split a pot of 120 gold. So if it's down to you and another person, you each get 60, which is kind of cool. Artifact anvil, component anvils, radiant item anvil, completed anvil, scuttle puddles back, player health increase, double item carousel, training dummy, unit accelerator, and then 2 that are actually focused around the headliner. We have Showtime. Headliners appear in your shop as if you were 1 level higher. If you're a competitive player, this one's a little dangerous, but you can start seeing 5-cost Chosens at level 8, for example. And then Multi-Talented will give you +1 to another one of their traits. So for example, Corki will get +1 8-bit and Big Shot. If you're asking, Multi-Talented doesn't affect unique traits, so it ends up making characters like Alawi not as good, but yeah. So those are the portals you can expect. Now with this set, we're kind of doing something intentionally. We're launching with these portals. We have some bigger portals that will be launching in a future patch, probably 14.1. But we wanted to hold these for now and not have the set be so overwhelming. So some of these include things like Support Anvil, Spatula, Tactician's Crown, gain a Tome of Traits, things like that. So these are the portals you can expect a little later once we get past launch. Augments. I'm not going to go over all the augment changes. If you want, you can check out the patch notes. We've brought some back, we've removed some, we've adjusted some to rebalance around the set. Some big things to note about the augment system. The hearts, crowns, and souls are all gone, so you're not going to see things like KDA heart or KDA soul or anything like that. Any augment that would give you +1 to a trait is gone, so no ancient archives, no wandering trainer. Those are all gone. The augment system, that's all separate because it's part of the headliner system. So that's the main change you can look for in augments. There's a bunch of new augments as well. There's new augments that benefit the traits. Things like, you know, your punk units every time they level up gain an item, stuff like that. So yeah, definitely check them out. There's like 180 augments total. So lots of cool augments to play with. All right, on the system changes, a couple things worth calling out here. The first is that player damage has been adjusted. You will take less damage from big losses where you lost by 4 or more. So especially good for the early game if you want to do something like Open Fort. But stage 4 and 5 damage went up by 1. So stage 4 and 5, you're going to want to try to, win a little bit more. Overall, it just leads to early game being a little less hectic, but that mid to late game mattering a bit more. Excess critical strike is now converted at 50% instead of the increased 80%. This is necessary for things like Executioner, as well as we made changes to the item, but basically it was leading to a situation where crits were getting really big. So it's back to just being 50%. And then finally, the bag system changes. One thing to note here, yeah, these are the right numbers, I believe, but basically there are less copies of each unit in the pool. This is most noticeable at 1 cost, 4 cost, and 5 cost. 2 and 3 barely change. You're not really going to notice those. But the short end of this is, if you're contested, it's going to be harder to hit than it was before. And especially 4 and 5 cost, if you're trying to 3-star them, it's going to be very difficult. So if somebody has one other unit, it's going to be tough. So yeah, but again, we're trying to counteract the number of 3-stars in the game and making contesting matter a little bit more, but only a little. Again, like your 3-cost reroll, 1 less copy in the pool is not going to do a whole lot. So, the other thing to talk about is the leveling changes. So we've actually made it easier to level up. So level 6, 7, and 8 are a little easier to hit. 9 is a little expensive, and 10 is expensive, but that's the other big change here, is that 10 is now permanent. You don't need augments like level up to reach level 10. Any player can reach level 10 at any time. With that came some bag or XP champion chances that have been reduced. So you can see here at level 7, tier 4 is all the way down to 10%. Level 7 is not where you go for 4 costs. There's no level 7 lottery, but it's much easier to go to 8, where you're actually supposed to get the 4 costs. So expect a lot more fast 8 in this world, build your army, then go to 9. You're going to hit 9 a lot more often this time, but if you really want to hit a 3-star 5 cost, you've got to go to 10. So, pretty cool. And then finally, some item changes. 2 new items to talk about. Rapid Fire has been replaced with Red Buff. This is attack speed, bonus damage, and burn. Your attacks and abilities apply burn, so pretty good item there if you need to apply anti-heal, or anti-heal. And then Steadfast Heart. We really wanted there to be a tank glove item, so this item is going to give you health, armor, and importantly, you're going to take less damage while you're above half health, even less damage. So really good tank item if you need some extra DR. You can go like Bramble plus this plus Warmogs or something like that. Some other bigger adjustments. Blue buff now reduces max mana by 10. You don't get the 10 more mana every time you get a kill, though. Instead, you get extra damage. Bramble Vest now has some bonus health on it. And then Quicksilver actually gains attack speed every 2 seconds while the shield is active. So by the end of it, it'll have 28% attack speed, which makes it a pretty good slam. So, yeah. Some other adjustments: Deathblade, Deathcap, Warmogs all have like bonus damage, bonus health. Infinity Edge and Jeweled Gauntlet, they now have it, so if you are already able to critical strike, you gain critical strike damage instead. So if you have Jeweled Lotus, these items aren't as big a bait, or on Executioners. Morello got slightly adjusted. Dragon's Claw has that max health. Ginsu's Rageblade got its attack speed up a little bit. And then obviously Radiance of all of these items as well. I think these are up-to-date values. If they're not, don't hold me to it. But Radiant versions of all of these more powerful items. Yeah, same thing here. Radiant versions if you want to look at these tooltips. But yeah. On the artifact side, some adjustments. Sniper's Focus got a slight adjustment. Hull Crusher gives more health. Deathfire Grasp got its bonus damage lowered quite a bit. It was a little too bursty. Mogul's Mail got a slight adjustment, a little extra health. Gold Collector, things like that. Goldmancer's Staff got adjusted. Banshee's Veil on the support items now gives attack speed as well, so it's a pretty good item if you want some of that as well. And then Gambler's Blade and Diamond Hands are 2 new artifacts that show up on a few augments, as well as you can get from things like Portable Forge. So 2 new artifacts to play with this set. I don't know, I'm a big Diamond Hands fan. And that's it. Now, before we go, one thing I'm going to do that's a little abnormal is I'm going to switch tabs here. And we're going to go over some of the cosmetics. Because there are some pretty cool cosmetics here. We've got our pass, which comes with 2 maps, 4 little legends, 700 treasure tokens, a bunch of emotes, and some booms. Some good stuff there. There's also this new map, which is pretty cool if you're a big fan of KDA. Transforms as well. So definitely check that out. We've got Chibi Set. Chibi Set will be available right away in patch 13.23. And then the Chibi version, which is Heartsteel Set, comes with his own finisher. Pretty cool. I like the penguin in the background here. And then in 13.24, which you'll see the next patch, there's going to be a Kali, which she has a really good ramen eating emote that I like. And then KDA Akali with the bike and another really cool finisher. If you like yellow, it's a really good finisher. And then later will also be Chibi Headliner KDA Popstar Kaisa. Definitely one of the cooler little legends. We've got Scratch based off Steve Aoki, which is kind of cool. Definitely check that out. And then a bunch of new little legends. I like dragons. Dragons are sweet. Got some Aoshens. We got some Umbras. Umbras are pretty sweet. And then we got some Chonks. Looking real good. So, I think that's... Oh, yeah, and then the Boba Sprite. Woohoo! Alright, we'll end on the Boba Sprite. So there you go. That's going to be Remix Rumble. Hope you guys are going to enjoy. Hopefully by the time you're watching it, your servers are already live and you're playing anyway. I know the rundown's coming late, but Thanksgiving holiday is weird. So, there you go. Hopefully it's a really great balanced set. Hopefully everyone has a ton of fun. Next thing for us is getting ready for Vegas Open. So, alright, that's going to do it for me. Enjoy Remix Rumble. Can't wait to play it with you all. Until next time, take it easy.